Welcome, my name is Katie Doley. When I first started to research the architecture of Grosse Pointe, I was in awe of the big names, Albert Kahn, Louis Camper, and George D. Mason. But once I started delving deeper, I discovered many talented designers who not only left a lasting impression in Grosse Pointe, but in many cases across the United States. One such man is Leonard B. Willeke, one of the unsung heroes of architecture in the community. The story of Leonard Willeke is one of success against unrelenting adversity, a career of highs and lows. It is a story we would know precious little about if it had not been for the persistence of one man, and that's Thomas Brunk. Thomas Brunk was an architectural historian at the University of Detroit School of Architecture, president of Indian Village Historical Collections, curator and archivist at the Pewabic Pottery, and author of Leonard B. Willeke, Excellence in Architecture and Design, and author of Pewabic Pottery, the American arts and crafts movement expressed in clay. Very little would be known about Willeke today if Brunk had not worked with Willeke's widow, Leona, to first secure a timeline and a biography, and later to assure preservation of the documents Willeke had saved during his career. Leonard B. Willeke was one of the most adaptable and prolific architects to work in the Detroit area. He was an extremely versatile designer capable of creating a house, a piece of furniture, a car, or a plan for an entire community. He was an incredibly gifted individual. He was born in Cincinnati in 1884. He began his architectural career at the age of 17 as an apprentice with a local firm. In 1905, Willeke moved to New York to work for the prestigious firm of Trowbridge and Livingston as a designer. His talent was quickly rewarded, for in 1906, aged 22, he was sent to San Francisco to design a replacement for the famous Palace Hotel, which had just been destroyed by earthquake and fire. When work on the new hotel was completed in late 1907, Willeke stayed on the West Coast and joined the California State Engineers Office to design earthquake-resistant buildings. He became the de facto state of California architect, working on schools, municipal buildings, parks, prisons, including Folsom and San Quentin, and perhaps most peculiar of all, an insectary, a building for studying and breeding insects. In 1908, Willeke moved to Paris to continue his education at the famed Paris École de Beaux-Arts. During his 2-year stay, he traveled extensively through Europe, North America, and England, making sketches and banking many ideas that he would use throughout his career. Several years later, Willeke returned to Cincinnati, where he completed a few projects and was in the midst of designing several significant hotels and office buildings when the massive Great Flood of 1913 put all but one project on hold indefinitely. With little work left in that region for the foreseeable future, Willeke moved to Detroit in 1914 as an associate at Elmer Ray Dunlop's firm. In 1916, he became registered as a Michigan architect, and in 1917, he left Dunlop and opened his own office. As a licensed Michigan architect, he started to work with an array of prestigious clients: Henry and Edsel B. Ford, Oscar Weber, and Charles Sorensen, to name but a few. During some of his early commissions, Willeke not only designed the house, but much of the interior, the hardware, doors, furniture, and even plans for the landscaping. His style was fresh, bold, and very different to the work of some of the other architects of that era. Willeke's experiences in Europe and his craftsman-like understanding of materials led him to specialize in fine, quality residential buildings bringing him success in both custom and speculative building ventures around the Detroit area. Based on his work for Edsel Ford, Henry Ford hired Willeke to design various service buildings for the Fair Lane estate in May of 1917. His rate of pay was $5.28 per hour. Along with the pictured gate lodge, Willeke also completed a rustic skating lodge, 3 stone cottages, and several buildings as part of the project. The following year, Henry Ford commissioned Willeke to plan a model city to house workers from his Rouge River plant. Willeke's Fordson Village was to provide homes for 3,700 families on a triangular section of Ford's land bounded by Michigan Avenue, Greenfield Road, and the Rouge River. You will note on the map that Fordson Village was planned on a scale that exceeded the size of the Ford Rouge plant. The major streets were being laid out when Henry Ford abandoned the project in 1921 after losing a bitter court battle with the Dodge brothers. Here is an example of a typical house Willeke had designed for the Fordson Village project. Between the nearly 1,200 hours on the Fordson project and the Fair Lane projects, Willeke had made a modest living. But he had little to show for 2 years' work and was not allowed to speak to anyone about Fordson Village after the project was cancelled. Willeke began working in Grosse Pointe around 1920. Prior to 1930, he designed commissioned and personal residences. At this point, Willeke's career was really beginning to take off. He and his wife Leona, along with their 3-year-old son Leonard Jr., resided in an apartment block located at Elmhurst Avenue before moving in 1920 to a new home he had designed on Moss Street in Highland Park. A couple of years after moving in, Willeke's career and income was such that he decided to build a larger residence for himself in Grosse Pointe Park. The decision, it is believed, not only made practical sense from a personal point of view, but also business sense, as it would put him closer to the lots he had recently purchased on Balfour to create several speculative homes. Willeke's new home for himself and his family was located at 1100 Berkshire, Grosse Pointe Park. He referred to the design of his new home as modern English. The floor plan has a U-shaped configuration, which not only made it compact and convenient, but also provided light and excellent air circulation throughout the house. Willeke designed the home with 2 main entrances, one at the front and the second at the side, each with direct access to the library. The 2,900 square foot home has a mahogany panelled library, which served as Willeke's consultation room. The main hall and the living room have barrel-vaulted ceilings and were filled with walnut detail and panelling. Puabic tile was used extensively throughout the house, while floral and animal motifs were present in much of the panelling and wall trim. At the time, Willeke was closely associated with Puabic pottery founder Mary Chase Stratton, and Puabic tile featured in many of his projects. The U-shaped floor plan also provided the home with the space to feature a sleeping porch on the second floor rear elevation. Sleeping porches became popular at the turn of the 20th century. Before the advent of air conditioning, a sleeping porch provided an ideal space for sleeping in a screened and furnished area during the warmer summer months. Construction of Willeke's new home began in November 1922, and the family moved in during the summer of 1923. Prior to moving into 1100 Berkshire, Willeke wrote the following note to a fellow architect. "Our new place is going to be a beauty. It is located in the finest residential suburb of Detroit and is very unusual in appearance, done purposely, as it will attract every passer-by, even though it is very quiet and homelike in its quality, but the form, colour, and materials used are of the utmost unusual kind. I expect to do all of my work in this locality for the next 5 years, and after that, who cares? For I expect to clean up enough to quit thinking about money matters. Starting in 1922, Willeke began designing a series of homes in Grosse Pointe for many prominent citizens of the region. One of his earliest projects was 1030 Balfour for George Zimmerman. This is 832 Balfour, completed in 1925 for Charles Thompson. Shown is both the house as built and an alternative proposal. Willeke often presented multiple sketches to his clients before settling on a final design. Willeke began planning a residence for Oscar Weber, general manager of Hudson's department store, in 1921. It was originally planned to have been built at the foot of Whittier, and this is an initial sketch. Willeke then drew plans for an even larger house at 22 Weber Place. Bids were solicited the following July, but construction at Weber Place did not begin until the summer of 1925. The original address of 22 Weber Place, Oscar and Marjorie's new home, was 619 Lakeshore Road. It was the largest residential commission of Willeke's career. In 1923, Willeke drew numerous plans for the magnificent Tudor home. A design was finally approved in the summer of 1924, and ground was broken in 1925. It is reported the property was projected to cost around $179,000, around $2.8 million today. It is also reported Oscar Weber retained complete control of the final design, with much redrawing and additional costs accrued by Weber before the final plans were approved. At the time, Willeke had also developed a subdivision plan for the property that would maintain its character, but could allow for the construction of 6 additional houses on the lot. It is said the relationship between Weber and Willeke was strained at times. However, both men had a mutual respect for each other and tolerated the frustrations during the 10-year span of the project. During the summer of 1927, Oscar Weber, his wife Marjorie, their daughter, his father-in-law and staff moved into the 10,300 square foot mansion. Upon completion, it had cost the Weber family a reported $476,000, which is around $7.3 million today, to build a home that was beyond opulent. At the time, Willeke wrote, "This is the best opportunity I have had in Detroit to do something fine, of which you and Mrs. Weber, as well as myself, could be justly proud." Wood in general was a huge feature in several rooms throughout the home, including both chestnut and oak panel walls. The 6 fireplaces have elaborate hand-carved detail and include stunning Puabic tile. Once again, Mary Chase Stratton worked closely with Willeke to create special colours and beautiful surface effects. As part of the commission, Willeke also wanted to retain control of the landscape design, yet despite his talent in this field, Weber hired nationally renowned designer Ellen Biddle Shipman to create the garden. The final design included a cedar arch, rock garden, a children's play lawn, a formal rose garden, along with a tea house and a swimming pool. Following the death of his wife, Marjorie, in 1941, and the marriage of his daughter, Oscar Weber found the house too large and moved to a smaller home on Beacon Hill Road, where he resided until he passed in 1967. I can report from the Higby Maxon Agnew archive files that in 1964, the then owner of the property listed the home for sale and had plans to demolish the house in 3 weeks if the property was not sold. There would then be a total of 10 lots on the parcel to build on. Thankfully, the property sold a couple of weeks later and the residence was spared. However, part of the estate was subdivided later that year. Willeke's original plan, created in 1924 for the subdivision, was not followed. "745 Balfour began as a collaborative project between Detroit architects J. Ivan Dice and Claire W. Ditchy. However, Willeke wound up completing it in 1927. Willeke also designed the garage, greenhouse, and the gardens at the residence. The 4,200 square foot colonial style home is constructed of pressed face brick over solid masonry and includes an attached 2-car garage along with separate 2-story carriage house. The carriage house was built with living quarters on the 2nd floor for staff, a garage area on the 1st floor, and workrooms in the basement. In 1941, 745 Balfour became one of the first homes in Grosse Pointe to be fully air-conditioned when 2 3.5-ton air conditioning units were installed and had to be located in a room of their own. The garden was filled with mature elms, fruit trees, a sea of tulips, and a large 38 by 18 square foot heated greenhouse. The greenhouse contained a deep storage pond located under one of the planting beds. During the winter, it was filled with koi carp that were moved indoors from the outside pond. The house has since been sold several times and has undergone many changes inside and out. It is believed through his project with Oscar Weber, Willeke became acquainted with William A. Petzold, who commissioned the architect to design a large Tudor residence and garden. The home Willeke created for the Petzold family, 10103 Mile Drive, is constructed of solid masonry and features traditional timbers associated with the Tudor style. The 3-story home is around 6,100 square foot. The 1st floor features a large living room, dining room, and a sunroom, along with 5 large bedrooms on the 2nd floor, and a ballroom complete with stage and 3 additional bedrooms for maids on the 3rd floor. Raymond Purdy had purchased the lot adjacent to Petzold. Admiring the Petzold home and not having decided upon an architect or a builder, Purdy was referred to Willeke by the Petzolds. 10123 Mile Drive is an elegant 3-story, 6,400 square foot Tudor home that was once located on a double lot. The exterior features finely laid brickwork and beautifully carved limestone. The property has intricate detailing inside and out with exquisite craftsmanship around the front door. In writing a letter of introduction to Purdy, Willeke described himself as follows: "My practice is different from that of others, as I am not in the commercial field, by specializing in fine residential work, only undertaking at any time as much work as I can personally design and execute, looking after all important phases of the work personally. This is most advantageous to the client who wants the best results architecturally, structurally, and economically." During the 1920s, Willeke also created several speculative residences in Grosse Pointe. The definition of a speculative house is a residence built without particular buyer in mind or under contract, but designed to appeal to the maximum market possible. In 1920, Willeke wrote the following in a letter: "Up to this time, I had accumulated considerable money, and after some studying and thinking the matter over for some time, decided to do some fine house building for myself. That is, to build for speculative purpose, to build and sell." One of his first speculative homes in Grosse Pointe was 1015 Buckingham, completed in 1921. 938 Balfour is a 3,800 square foot French colonial-inspired residence. Constructed of brick, the exterior features a striking and distinctive decorative band of iridescent Puabic tiles along the front and side elevations. Puabic tiles were also used heavily throughout the interior. The property also features ornate fireplaces, leaded glass windows, along with 4 bedrooms and 2 additional bedrooms for maids. The house was sold in 1923 for $52,000, which is around $812,000 today. It was purchased by Colonel Jesse G. Vincent, American aircraft, marine, automobile engine designer, and chief engineer for Packard. In 1927, Colonel Vincent sold 938 Balfour and moved to his new home, 15500 Windmill Point. This is 1103 Berkshire, completed in 1922. And here we have an additional view of the home. This is 785 Balfour, completed in 1923. The Italian residence-inspired home also features an abundance of Puabic tile in the interior, along with intricate plastered detail and a barreled ceiling in the 20-foot foyer. Due to the economic downturn, this home remained unsold until 1925, and is believed Willeke took 2 Detroit residences and a vacant Grosse Pointe Park lot in trade for the home. This is 1068 Berkshire, completed in 1923. And here we have an alternative view of the home. It is reported the sale of 1068 Berkshire made Willeke only $200. At the time, this was less than the price of an average car. Here we have 1176 Berkshire, completed in 1925. This is the original concept drawing by Willeke. Both the house and the garage are still visible from this viewpoint today. Here we have 746 Balfour, completed in 1929. And this is 766 Balfour, also completed in 1929. This is an alternative view of the home, which was sold to Walter Hemmel. Around the mid-1920s, Willeke began to experience a series of lows. In 1926, his son Leonard Jr. had blood poisoning that led to permanent severe brain damage. In 1929, he was hit by the Great Depression. By 1930, his income had halved. From 1931 through to 1934, it is reported Willeke was virtually without income. Speculative home building and other projects became a necessity to ensure lifelong care for his son Leonard Jr. The Great Depression was financially devastating for Willeke. His income in 1930 was only half that of the previous year, and the following 3 years he was virtually without income. Willeke was forced to move from his spacious Berkshire Road home to a small apartment on Village Lane in April 1932. To put the effects of the Great Depression into context, sales of new automobiles fell 75%. Automobile companies had a combined loss of $191 million in 1932, which is $2.9 billion today. The highly profitable luxury end of the market virtually disappeared, and half the automakers closed down. In 1933, Willeke wrote a letter to his brother-in-law stating, "I have not lost my confidence in myself or my ability in my own field of work, and have never been at a loss in knowing how to take care of my responsibilities, but I admit that I have never faced a situation like the present one." From 1930 through to 1950, Willeke worked on several commissioned and personal residences in Grosse Pointe. Having weathered the worst of the financial storm, Willeke in 1934 began to receive some small remodelling jobs, followed by a commission from attorney Henry Bogle for a new home, 433 Lakeland, which was his first major project since the Great Depression. Despite his dip in fortunes, Willeke had lost none of his architectural flair. The formal brickwork of the house makes for a classic design, while the irregularly cut shingles provide an interesting design element. This is 1154 Grayton, completed in 1936 for Pierre Heffler. And here we have 1036 Berkshire, completed in 1936 for Madeline Meyer. This is an additional view of the home. 806 Three Mile was completed in 1937. This large colonial was built for William Oddy. The 4,000 square foot home features a beautiful circular staircase, 6 bedrooms, and has fireplaces located in the living room, library, and the lower level family room. It is also believed Willeke was responsible for the Puabic tile fountain in the rear garden. Fountains were a regular feature of many Willeke garden designs. This included the gardens and fountain at 226 Provençal, completed in 1940. In 1937, with his career back on track, Willeke set about building himself a new home and studio at 1142 Bishop Road. Willeke still owned the house on Berkshire, from which he derived a rental income. When designing his new 2,300 square foot home on Bishop, Willeke chose to pursue and investigate an artistic and fresh design for his new home, incorporating his remarkable sensitivity for the use of materials, colours and textures. He selected to keep the cost of the new residence to under $14,000, which is around $240,000 today. And despite wanting to use Puabic tile throughout, he chose to proceed with less expensive tile to keep within his budget constraints. The home is particularly handsome, as an excellent example of how his style has evolved during the 1930s. This is 1142 Audubon, completed in 1937 for George Melling. And here we have 1011 Harvard, completed in 1938 for Robert Olb. This is 514 Barrington, completed in 1940 for Adolph Norp. And 687 Balfour, completed in 1941 for David Ruenta. In 1950, Willeke completed 240 Stevens for Raymond Wilson. At the time, the property was featured in an article in the Detroit Free Press entitled How and Why to Live on a Hill. During this era, Willeke worked on numerous projects to generate additional income. For Leonard Willeke, the projects were a means to secure a financial future for his family, including his son, who would require supervised care for the rest of his life. One such project is 563 Fisher, a speculative home completed in 1936. This is 500 Neff, a multi-family home completed in 1937. And in 1943, Willeke worked on a wartime housing project. Willeke built over 150 housing units in 2 adjacent projects in Detroit. These projects significantly improved his finances and allowed him to feel he had established financial security for his family. Referring to the wartime housing project, in 1943, Willeke said, "The whole project is a big one-man band undertaking, and I am gaining a lot of experience as a rapid change artist as architect. promoter, construction superintendent, purchasing agent, financier, bookkeeper, and stenographer. 1251 Harvard was completed in 1949. It is possibly Willeke's last speculative home he designed in Grosse Pointe. This is 844 Vernier, completed in 1950. And also in 1950, we have 8454 Vernier. As you can see, during the final years of his career, Willeke had adapted his style once more. In total, he created 4 ranch homes on Vernier Road. However, only 844 and 854 still exist today. Willeke once said, "An architect must be an artist, and painting, music, poetry, sculpture must be studied by him in order to educate all artistic senses which are expressed in his work." Upon his retirement, Willeke submitted the following to the American Institute of Architects Journal. As you can see, strangely, when summarizing his career, he barely mentions his work in Metro Detroit. Upon his death in 1970, this was Willeke's bio in the Architectural Foundation of Cincinnati. As you can see, it really doesn't do him justice. Sadly, Willeke's creativity, passion and talent were only fully recognized after his death, during the 1980s. He was an outstanding individual with an enthusiasm to create wonderful designs for clients with varying financial constraints. After Mrs. Willeke's death in 1981, Thomas Brunk assisted with the donation of her husband's architectural library of more than 400 volumes and 2,600 photographs to the University of Michigan College of Art and Architecture Library to form the Willeke Collection. The archives of his practice are housed at the University of Michigan Bentley Historical Library. In 1983, the University of Michigan Taubman College created a prestigious annual Willeke Design Prize to promote excellence in innovation in architectural design. In 1984, Grosse Pointe Park opened a gazebo in Patterson Park. The structure was designed in honor of Willeke and his wife, who were residents of Grosse Pointe for over 50 years, and in recognition of his work and the contributions he had made to the local community. New matte cornflower blue Arabic tiles encircle the gazebo and edges of its floor. More blue tiles with a stamped motif wrap around its 8 columns. Leonard Willeke and his family contributed to the community on many levels. He designed and built homes of lasting grace and dignity. It will be fair to say that Grosse Pointe Park and many cities throughout the United States would not look as they do today without him. Leonard's career may have had its highs and lows, but his skill, appreciation, enthusiasm and love of design never diminished, and thankfully, his architectural contribution to Grosse Pointe can still be seen today, receiving the recognition he thoroughly deserves. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please feel free to contact me at my email address, katieldolley@gmail.com, or you can view my website and my blog at katiedoley.com/blog. Many thanks.